Thank you everyone, and welcome to the special Cabinet meeting on Monday 19th of June 2023. First item on the agenda, report apologies for absence. I know we have for Councillor Anderson. Moving on to the second item, are there any declarations of interest? Nope. So we'll move on to item number 3, which is a review of Council Office accommodation, and this report is by Phil Dawes. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to advise the Cabinet of the outcome of the review of the Council's accommodation portfolio. Members will be aware we have a number of office buildings in the Council, and the three main ones that accommodate our office-based staff are Spearsbridge, Headquarters and Barhead. COVID, along with the utilisation of modern technology, has seen an acceleration of changes to traditional working practices and environments, and as a consequence there's now an office space surplus to requirements. Therefore, an exercise needed to be undertaken to identify which office space or properties could be disposed of, and the two key buildings under consideration for closure were either Spearsbridge or Eastwood Headquarters, and Barhead is seen as an anchor building for Barhead, and a previous Cabinet paper agreed that an assessment would be taken between Spearsbridge and Headquarters. It's worth noting that Headquarters is more than office accommodation. It's also a front-facing public access building for the registration of births, marriages and deaths, and it's also location of the Council's civic chambers, including elected member accommodation. Also necessary to note that Spearsbridge is not owned by the Council. Currently the Council leased the building and the lease expires in February 2026. Paragraphs 9 and 10 note the options that were considered. Option 1 was retaining the use of Spearsbridge and ending the occupation of Headquarters, which would necessitate a need to divert registration of birth, marriages and death services either into Eastwood House, the new leisure centre or Giftnet Library, or a similar location, and to utilise Eastwood House as a civic chamber and a location for member services. And option 2 was to retain Headquarters and bring the lease of Spearsbridge to an end. In exploring these options, we did look at the matter in some detail. We looked at what changes would be needed and what the potential costs would be. If we didn't extend the lease of Spearsbridge, there was a variety of options that we considered that could be looked at for Headquarters, and these options are noted at paragraph 14. A variety of data was gathered for each option, and that is noted at paragraph 15 and in the appendices. Appendix 1 provides a summary of the information, and Appendix 2 gives more detail. Both option 1A and option 1B were costed at over £16 million over a 20-year period, and the variety of options 2 were costed at between £8.9 and £14.12 million. As noted, the costs have been calculated over a 20-year period. The table within the appendix contains the necessary data for each of the options. The same designer and consultant was engaged for both buildings to ensure that the comparisons were constant and appropriate. So one can conclude that on a financial basis, option 1 was not favoured, but paragraph 22 also notes a range of non-financial considerations that were taken into account as well. For example, Headquarters could potentially accommodate more people and is better located geographically. Taking both financial and non-financial considerations into account, paragraph 23 notes that it's clear that vacating Spearsbridge and retaining Headquarters is the best option. It's therefore proposed that the principle of not renewing the lease of the Spearsbridge office when it expires in February 2026 is agreed. It's further proposed that the variations of option 2 are explored in more detail and workshops be undertaken with elected members during this time to discuss options for the building, and then that would be the subject of a future report to Council or Cabinet. And the proposed time frame for the exploration of the variations of option 2 is likely to be between 3 to 6 months. Paragraph 26 notes that the cost of exploring the variations of option 2 and taking it to Royal Institute of British Architects Stage 4 is estimated to be around £90,000. I think it's important to note that at this stage one can't state with certainty what the costs will be. It needs to be formally designed and costed. We have also included contingencies of 20%. Members may be aware that a previous report to Cabinet on a previous building, we agreed that we would have contingencies of around 20% for the refurbishment of existing buildings. It should also be noted that car parking pressure on the Eastwood campus site has often been significant, and when the existing leisure centre is replaced, this pressure could increase. Therefore, we propose to undertake a master planning exercise for the Eastwood campus site informed by traffic assessment in order to ensure that car parking and transport provision is sufficient, and as paragraph 28 notes, this is likely to cost around £40,000. As part of the ending of the lease of Spears Bridge, the council would be liable for dilapidations. A revenue provision for this has not yet been made, but that would require to be accounted for as part of a future budget setting, and that is referenced at paragraph 29. I would also note that ICT kit is important for modern productive working. It's not just about buildings, it's about the kit. The costs of the technology and the ICT infrastructure, both for headquarters and for the planned Barhead office developments, are not yet finalised, but it's important to note that irrespective of decisions on the disposal of a building, this technology investment would be required to modernise the way we work and meet the expectation of both the workforce and elected members. The aim in relation to technology is to ensure that every workstation is as uniform as possible, which will include monitors, keyboards, docking stations, headsets, etc., and the capacity to have hybrid meeting equipment in the meeting rooms. And paragraph 31 notes the approach to the finances on this issue. As noted at paragraph 33, we propose to have a number of briefing sessions with elected members to explore the potential design sections options for option 2, both in relation to office accommodation and the civic chambers. This will provide an opportunity both for us to explain to members what is possible and also to obtain feedback. And we will also have a working group with the impacted services in order to progress the design options for the office accommodation. And as such, I'm happy to recommend the report to Cabinet and take any questions.
Thank you very much, Phil. Any questions? Councillor Pragnell.
I know it was mentioned at a meeting with the Get Zero working group, which is a member officer group, that you thought initially that it would be harder to retrofit and get this building to net zero. Is that now changed from the initial investigation?
Yes, it has. I mean, this was an evidence-based exercise in that we didn't have a predetermined outcome. We looked at both of the options objectively and impartially. We've had a number of visual surveys of the building undertaken. So we think that, for example, the energy utilisation in this building can be more efficient than it's currently configured. We are also looking at the possibility of heat networks for the whole campus, which could look at potentially powering the leisure centre, the school, and this building as well. So we think the opportunities for this building to be energy efficient are greater than what we initially envisaged.
Danny, Councillor Devlin.
Just a question following the Barhead building. Are we confident we've got enough parking spaces in the Barhead building?
Parking at the Barhead building has always been perceived as being tight. We have more parking provision than people perhaps appreciate, but people always have the desire to park as close to the building as possible. So sometimes when people conclude there isn't parking, what they've concluded is there isn't parking sufficiently close to the building that they would like. But there is actually, I think, sufficient parking around the office building that is sufficient, but we are going to undertake an assessment of parking for the Barhead building as well in order to confirm that.
Any other questions from members? Phil, I really welcome this report. I think we kicked this off, November, December last year. It's part of the the budget process. So really welcome this update and where we are. One question: have staff been consulted on this so far, or is that part of the next phase?
We've had initial consultations with heads of service from various services. So we have spoken with Customer First, with registrations, etc. Because when we're looking at the two options, particularly when exploring the possibility of vacating headquarters, we needed to consider how we would potentially relocate Customer First and registration services. So those services were involved in those conversations.
And unions, have they been consulted yet?
Yes, I have spoken with the unions on this, and they are comfortable with the process.
Thanks very much. Just another couple of comments. Really welcome in the report the discussion of a master plan for Eastwood Park. I think that makes sense now that we're seriously looking at the option of retaining the council HQ. That's a great opportunity with the leisure centre, St Ninians, and Eastwood House to really understand how best we utilise the facilities we've got together. And again, welcome the discussion of local heat networks. It makes perfect sense for us to be considering that at this stage, particularly when we've got St Ninians there that has got a lot of potential solar benefits for the rest of us. So that would be very interesting to see. Question on the capital plan. Obviously, this was unbudgeted capital spend. So at what point does the capital plan get adjusted? And that's probably for Barbara. Phil?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the capital plan will be updated in the next round. Phil will be submitting a CPA as part of the process.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so if there are no other... Sorry.
Just to remind everyone, it's more a comment than a question for Phil, that just a background to this is cost savings for the council, and it was part of our consultation. So the figures we're talking about today are figures for the cost of running the buildings over 20 years, but the actual reason for doing this is to get savings as compared to the status quo. So moving to Spears Bridge would give us a small saving. I think it's page 11 gives us a savings of perhaps a range of 1.3 million, but the actual bigger savings are the move to closing Spears Bridge and coming into this building because of energy savings, the rental. So it's all about savings. But we have looked at it over a 20-year period. So when you're looking at the capital investment, you have to do that. So the capital cost of borrowing, the cost of borrowing has been built in to give a like-for-like comparison, but it is all about savings. But sometimes you have to invest a little to get those savings as well.
That's a very good point. That is the whole reason why this project was kicked off. And I think we need to be mindful of the savings that we'd targeted previously for this, so that when final proposals come through that we're clear on what the net savings will be, not just from an ongoing operational cost savings, but also impact on the loan interest charges for this transaction as well. So with that, if I can move to the recommendations, it is recommended that Cabinet approves the principle of not renewing the lease of Spears Bridge office when it expires, notes the intention to cost and submit a capital project appraisal in relation to Eastwood headquarters, notes the intention to submit an investment bid to progress the design, and notes the intention to return to Council with more detailed costed options. Are we agreed with those recommendations? Thank you very much. And with that, can we now move on to item number 4, which is the interim review of housing revenue account business plan, and that's Phil again. Thanks, Phil.
Okay, thank you. The purpose of the report is to advise Cabinet of the outcome of an interim review of the Housing Revenue Account business plan and the measures available to manage the temporary deficit in the years 24-25 and 25-26. It's quite complicated, and given the large sums involved, very important, so I'll take some time to go through it. Just to remind members, the Housing Revenue Account is the name of the council account where all income and expenditure related to the council's housing is accounted for, and it's separate from the general fund. The business model for the Housing Revenue Account is calculated over a 30-year period. That's because the costs of capital investment are spread over the estimated useful life of the investment rather than being funded from the revenue in the year of the investment, because large borrowing is required. The business model is reviewed annually, and the data that is input includes the current year estimated costs of rental income, the projected budgets for future years, which is based upon inflation, pay rise predictions, rent increase assumptions, estimated levels of bad debt provision and voids, and also the capital investment required, which will include investment in both new council housing and existing council housing. There's been a lot of pressure on the business plan in recent years. We have had to account for pay rises, we've had to account for inflation, which has been particularly high for a construction environment in which housing operates, increased energy costs and increased rent arrears as a result of COVID. An example of the particular types of pressure that the Housing Revenue Account faces, the 22-23 pay offer that was agreed by COSLA was higher than budgeted, and whilst some additional general fund resource was provided by the Scottish Government, no additional resource was provided by the Scottish Government to the Housing Revenue Account. It was always going to be the case that the next few years would be challenging, and the pressures I've just mentioned exacerbated that. As a council, we have debt that was borrowed by our predecessor councils of Eastwood District Council and Renfrew Council that was due to be paid off in 2026. This was always going to cause cash flow issues for the last few years of that debt, and the plan was to use some reserves to even out the cash flow, but the pressures that I mentioned earlier has exacerbated these issues. Furthermore, as noted at paragraph 7 in the report, the Council's loans fund repayment policy for both the Housing Revenue Account and the General Fund was revised in line with Scottish Government guidance and approved at Council on the 3rd of March 2022. This meant that for new investments, the Council moved from equal payments over the life of the loan to an equal instalments method, which was equal payments of principal plus interest. This had the impact of making repayments higher for the next few years. As noted at paragraph 8, as a consequence, when the 23-24 HRA budget was approved by Council on the 1st of March, that included a drawdown of £824,000 from reserves. While that didn't pose a problem for this year, that could only ever have been a temporary solution. So paragraph 15 notes the range of options that are available to us. Firstly, we will compare the 23-24 budget with the actual outturn for 22-23. The purpose of that exercise is to identify any areas of potential saving which could help address that deficit, and the draft outturn position should be available round about now. We would need to review our rent levels and service charges from 24-25 onwards as to whether, and ask whether they could or should be increased. Review non-essential spend, review how we treat capital receipts, and I can explain that more if members wish. And finally, one option was to review the HRA loan fund repayment term and policy. And it was felt that option E could be put in place relatively quickly and easily, and that would involve rephasing the inherited debt. Paragraph 17 and 18 explores that in greater detail, but the intention would be to reprofile the inherited debt with effect from the 1st of April 2024, and we would extend the repayment term by 3 years to the 31st of March 2029 instead of March 2026. A few points that are worthy of noting. Extending the inherited debt repayment term could result in an additional cost of £240,000 over the 5-year period, but that would help limit any potential rent increase for tenants. Secondly, that proposed 5 years period is the maximum we are proposing. It may be possible to pay off the debt sooner, and thus, in that circumstance, it would be less than a cost of £240,000. Also important to note that this paper is not seeking permission to reprofile the debt. Such permission would be sought in March 2024. This report is merely flagging up our intention to seek permission at a later date and thus reassure Cabinet that the finances are in order. And whilst this report refers to option E of paragraph 15, the remaining options will still be explored and will be subject to a later report to Cabinet. And as such, I'm happy to recommend this report to Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Phil. Councillor Devlin.
Phil, just a question in the Barthead Southlands. I mean, I believe that's up for sale as we speak. The capital receipt, that will be given to the housing revenue account. The general fund will have no part of it.
That's correct. The whole receipt will go to the housing revenue account.
That's fine.
Phil, thank you very... Councillor Devlin, you got another question?
No, it's fine.
Thanks, Phil. Very helpful. It's actually quite a complicated report, but just to clarify, this is looking at various options, but we don't have to agree in any of those options today, and that once we've got the 30-year business plan presented and discussed, we'll be in a better view as to how we deal with the short-term reserve issues, which you've got a number of options of which you can deal with in the short to medium term. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes, that's correct.
Great. So with that in mind, if we're happy to go to the recommendations, so Cabinet is asked to note the financial pressures that the HRA business plan faces, the various measures and options available to manage the forecasted deficit in the years 24-25 and 25-26, that the rescheduling of inherited debt repayments should reduce the financial pressure over the next years, and the intention to further review aspects of the 30-year HRA business plan in the coming months and to report to Cabinet later in the year. Are we agreed on that? Thank you very much. Thanks, Phil. Now moving on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the East Renfrewshire Council Nielsen on-street waiting and loading order 2023, and is Jane talking to this report? Thanks, Jane.
Thank you. This report recommends that Cabinet approves the making of the Nielsen on-street waiting and loading restriction order. There are currently no waiting restrictions in effect in the Nielsen area at present. A number of concerns have been raised over the years regarding irresponsible parking regularly taking place on various roads in the area, which are deemed to cause obstruction and/or a serious road safety risk for other road users. A review was undertaken with a view to addressing concerns raised, and a number of new restrictions were proposed as detailed in the order included as Appendix 2 of this report. As a result of the public consultation, 9 objections and 6 notes of support were received. Some amendments were made to the proposals, and as a result, 1 objection was withdrawn, 4 were maintained, and 4 objectors did not confirm whether or not they wished to withdraw or maintain their objections. All of the objections and our responses and the amendments made to the proposal are detailed in Appendix 1 of the report. Of the 4 maintained objections, 2 related to the proposed restrictions at the 2 Briggle-Lee Terrace junctions with Main Street, where no waiting at any time restrictions are proposed to extend 10 metres into the junction. The objections relate to the shortage of available parking and the effect the restrictions will have on displacing parking further along the road. It's acknowledged that not all properties in Briggle-Lee Terrace have access to off-street parking, and that there is a high demand for on-street parking on the narrow roads. However, the restrictions proposed reflect the guidance in the Highway Code, which states do not stop or park within 10 metres of a junction, and in the interests of road safety it is recommended that these restrictions remain as is proposed. A similar objection was maintained regarding the proposed restriction at the junction of Mullen Diner Terrace with Main Street. Again, the objector referred to possible displacement of parking and requested that the length of the restriction be reduced or that it be applied to one side of the road only. As with Briggle-Lee, while we acknowledge the demand for on-street parking in the area, in the interests of road safety and reflecting the guidance of the Highway Code, we are still recommending the 10 metres of restriction at the junction area be applied. The final objection which has been maintained related to the gap left in the proposed no waiting restrictions in Duncarnock Crescent that could accommodate approximately 4 cars. The objector raises concerns that restrictions proposed on High Street could displace vehicles onto Duncarnock Crescent and that the gap being left in the restriction on Duncarnock Crescent for parking creates a danger. They also noted that they would like Duncarnock Crescent to be restricted for residents parking only. The road service consider that the road layout at this location can safely accommodate the small length of on-street parking which has been retained, and that the presence of these spaces will be of particular benefit to residents or visitors of nearby properties, and no amendments to the proposals have been made. It should also be noted that legislation does not permit any more onerous restrictions to be applied without a further consultation. The Cabinet are asked to approve the making of this order.
Thank you very much, Jane. Any questions? Jane, I really welcome this. As you know, there have been a large number of complaints about parking in Nielsen for some time, so I'm glad to see this report.
20 years.
Sorry?
20 years.
20 years. I've got a few questions, if I may. Firstly, when will this be enforced?
So the aim of bringing it to this Cabinet was so that we can actually apply the markings during the school holiday period and have them enforceable before the schools go back.
Perfect, thank you. Secondly, how, and this is a broader issue in terms of process, how do you deal with unresolved objections? What's the method you do to deal with that?
So we can monitor the situation. If the unresolved objections require us to apply more stringent restrictions, then that will have to be part of a further consultation. If it's seen that would be, if the road service agree that would be necessary, then we can go through a further consultation period.
So basically a watching brief on those items. Specifically, Nielsen Community Council, did they respond to this at all?
We didn't have any response from Nielsen Community Council themselves.
That's a bit disappointing given the number of complaints they've made to me about the items about parking in Nielsen. I'll raise that with them and draw this to their attention. Finally, Dundonald Place, I had a number of complaints specifically on Dundonald Place. Really to do with construction and at the campus and people parking construction vehicles on that road. What specifically, how are we addressing those issues within Dundonald Place?
So these proposals include a restriction planned for the street fronting Dundonald Place, Kingston Road, and they actually extend the restriction, extends 10 metres into Dundonald Place, but the remainder of Dundonald Place remains free for parking. In the short term, that could displace some parking from High Street into Dundonald Place, but we were aware that the main concerns are surrounding construction traffic. The major projects team have spoken to their contractor last week, asked them to refrain from parking in that area, and we're also speaking to education about what we can do to try and deter parents from parking in Dundonald Place when the restrictions in Kingston Road kick in.
Thanks for that. So you've addressed those issues, much appreciated. So with that, if we can go to the recommendations on this paper, which is for Cabinet to recommend and approve the making and confirmation of the East Renfrewshire Council Nielsen On-Street Waiting and Loading Order 2023. Are we agreed with that? Agreed. Thank you very much, Jane. Moving on to the final item of the agenda, which is item number 6, update on the Digital Transformation Programme, and this will be taken by Jamie Reid. Thank you, Jamie.
Good morning. The purpose of this report is to provide Cabinet with an update on the achievements of the Digital Transformation Programme during 22-23 and to give an overview of plans for 23-24. The Council's Digital Transformation Strategy for 21-24 was approved by Cabinet in June of 2021 and focused on 3 areas, each of which has a programme board that meets every 4 to 6 weeks. That's business systems and processes, customer experience and workforce productivity. The focus of the Business Systems and Processes programme is to replace legacy systems and shift to modern systems that are secure, efficient and effective, and to drive value out of those systems through iterative continuous improvement. The programme covers major systems replacements, renewals and pilot work in a number of areas, but it's worth highlighting that over the last year, some of the major systems replaced include the HSCP implementation of a new care at home scheduling system, which was achieved under very challenging circumstances during peak winter demand, and a housing management system which was replaced in April of 2023, covering allocations, customer services, estates, homelessness and housing advice, rent, repairs and service charges, and enabling the integration of other key business systems, including revenue and benefits. Work in this area has also included automation and including the focus of invoicing the 100 top suppliers through robot process automation and other techniques, and also improving our online payments for the Culture and Leisure Trust with back-end automation, and improving the security overall of a number of key systems, including our HR and payroll systems, through the introduction of things like two-factor authentication. The next steps for this programme include the future replacement of the Care First case recording system for the HSCP, and again it's important to state the scale of that project, the sensitivity of the data and the work involved in doing it, and also preparing for seamless next generation for schools, while also continuing the upgrade of the finance and procurement systems and linking as well to the new housing system. Within the customer experience work stream, that programme is driven by an organisational-wide customer experience strategy to provide consistent, efficient customer experience designed with the user at our heart, utilising the Scottish approach to service design. Again, the report sets out a range of work that has been undertaken, but it is worth highlighting that included within this year, the digital telecare system has ensured that around 300 of our most vulnerable residents have lifeline community alarms in place, and that has also led to the significant improvement of efficiency of staff routing. And again, East Renfrewshire is one of the first councils in the country to move to such a platform. The Customer Experience Programme also continues to iterate and improve our customer processes, and over this year there's been improvements around money, advice and rights, out of hours homelessness, bulky uplift payments, abandoned vehicles, short-term lets and business waste. It's also promoted a broader range of online services and channel shift, with 15,000 people signed up to the My East Ren portal, almost 93% of pupils being linked to Parent Portal, and which has in turn supported the reduction in 35,000 printed pages for school bags, 8,000 permission slips, and has supported around 62% of young people now signing up for the free bus travel scheme. We've also seen the introduction of a new 24-hour birth registry and booking system, which has saw a 93% channel shift with high customer levels of satisfaction. The focus of that programme over the next year will be the delivery of a unified comms platform to improve customer routing and journey analysis, to continue to grow and improve My East Ren, and further expand online bookings and forums, and also increase the automation around education maintenance allowance applications. Finally, the workforce productivity workstream aims to improve the productivity and effectiveness of our workforce by enabling, embedding and enhancing a range of digital tools. This year we've completed the move to an in-house performance management system that will improve the efficiency of performance reporting, and which has laid the foundations for a move to a more dashboard-driven approach. We've also completed a new contracts register, providing a single source of truth and supporting the reduction in work done by our procurement team that helps them improve their supplier management and drive greater value from our contracts. And we've also built a range of dashboards from our finance and M365 platforms to help ensure that invoices are paid on time. And of course, members heard earlier about the future asset plans for the buildings, and the work is undergoing at the moment around agile, hybrid meetings and so on that supports the enablement of that project as well. So the next focus of that work will be, that programme of work will be to expand our use of Microsoft 365 further, deliver more real-time dashboards that help tackle a range of issues, and also continue to support the Way We Work project and the delivery of savings around that. So overall, there has been significant progress in recent years to deliver the Council's current transformation strategy, Budget challenges mean that we continue to clearly prioritise our activities and resources to ensure that we deliver benefits from projects, that they contribute to future saving opportunities, and that we improve the experiences of residents and reduce bureaucracy. Over the coming year, we'll be aligning the transformation programme further with Vision for the Future to ensure that the Council has the capabilities, skills and tools to deliver that vision. We'll be working to further improve our prioritisation and benefits framework to make sure that we're making the right changes and the Council is reaping the full benefits of its investment and transformation. So it's recommended that Cabinet that notes the achievements and future plans across the 3 areas of our digital transformation programme. And pass over to you now.
Thanks very much, Jamie. Any questions? Councillor Pragnell.
It's more of a comment. I just wanted to praise the team on the analog to digital telecare project. It was mentioned at COSLA Health and Social Care Committee a couple of weeks ago how East Renfrewshire were ahead of the curve, and that everyone should be, all other local authorities should be looking to us for how we've managed this. So I just want to praise everyone and thank the team involved in that.
Thanks very much, Councillor Pragnell. No questions from Councillor Devlin. Jamie, really welcome this report. This is an important programme of delivery for the Council, not just this year, but into the years ahead. I welcome your mentioning of a balanced scorecard or dashboard approach in terms of getting greater clarity on the benefits of either cost reductions or service improvements over time. So I really welcome the development of that and look forward to seeing that as we go through. And I also welcome your linking to capabilities for Vision for the Future. It is critical that this digital transformation programme is linked with that Vision for the Future, and we're prioritising accordingly. So I really welcome all of those points. And to echo Councillor Pragnell, it's an amazing set of results and performance that we've seen here. So well done to all the team driving these projects through. So well done. Thank you. So with that, can I go to the recommendation? It is recommended that Cabinet notes achievements and future plans across the 3 areas of our digital transformation programme: customer experience, business systems and processes, and workforce productivity. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. And that brings us to an end to this Cabinet meeting. Thank you very much.